Hola, mi gente, and welcome to Cuéntame con Sonia Camacho. This short form podcast features the stories of Latinos from our community, from engineers, business owners, students, and so much more. Each episode will give you a quick boost of motivation and encouragement before starting your day. I'm your host, Sonia Camacho. Thank you for being here. Now let's get into today's episode. Okay, welcome back to Cuéntame con Sonia Camacho. Today I have a guest that many of you may recognize. Sandra Velazquez is the founder of the brand Nopalera and was recently featured on Shark Tank. Sandra launched her luxury bath and body care line in 2020 during the pandemic and is now the first Mexican bath and body care brand to be sold at Nordstrom. With all that, thank you so much for being here, Sandra. Please tell us a little bit more about yourself.
So I thought I was put on earth to write songs and perform on stage, and that's actually what I did for most of my adult life. And I actually used music as my platform to celebrate culture, and I sang in Spanish. So I've always been very culture forward, and very kind of bold in the celebration of my roots. And I had no inclination to become an entrepreneur, let alone a beauty entrepreneur. But something happened like in the summer of 2019. I found myself unemployed for the first time with no savings, a child, and I was 43 years old. And it was really this moment of like, how did I get here? How did my life become like this where I have nothing to fall back on? Because the thing about being a musician is that the income is like, it's not steady. It's like you're making an
Mhm.
album one year and then like maybe the next year you're like on tour. So I always had to have a day job. It's also because I live in New York. And
Mhm.
it was just this moment of, you know, like a fork in the road, or, I felt like it was a moment of self responsibility where I really felt like, wow, the only way anything's going to change is if I actually change it dramatically. And I just felt called in that moment to build. And I felt, everything I had done in my life up to that point had led me to this moment where I felt I was qualified to create this brand authentically. I had experience like in sales from working for other brands, and I just understood people. I understood, branding. Um, but what I didn't know how to do was how to make products or how to get them made, because I was not coming from the beauty industry. So that was a whole other journey.
Mhm.
But once I decided that I was going to create this high end Latina brand, I didn't doubt myself. I didn't sleep on it. I didn't, think twice about it. I just felt literally called to do it. And I felt like, wow, how come there's not already like 5 brands like Nopalera? Like, given the fact that
Mhm.
they're such a huge, part of this country. So that's kind of how it started.
Wow. Well, how was that experience getting into Nordstrom, such a big retailer? I recently interviewed Rachel Gomez, the founder of Viva La Bonita, and they're also sold in Nordstrom. And she just explained, like, what that felt like in that whole process. If you could walk us through your experience, I think that would be super interesting to hear.
Yeah, so getting into Nordstrom at the time, I was, when I launched Nopalera in the pandemic, so November 2020, when I launched, I was still working other jobs. So I had to go and get other jobs to help me like pay bills while I was building Nopalera. So I really
Okay.
spent about a year building. Was working on the brand, I was working, studying formulation. I enrolled myself in formulation school and was learning how to make products. And at the time, I wanted to definitely get into one of these like nice national retailers. Nordstrom was on
Mhm.
my list, so was Credo Beauty for like clean credibility. And I was literally in my soap studio covered in oil. I was like wearing hospital scrubs, covered in oils, when I got the call from my sales manager, that said, like, we have a yes from Nordstrom. And so that was when I was like, okay, this is really happening. And this was about, I don't know, 6 months into the business, when we got the news. So I knew that it was time to quit my day job. Like, this was going to move
Yeah.
forward.
That's awesome. So next, with the last 5 minutes, I really want to dive into your Shark Tank episode. I want you to tell us all the details, the whole process, because I think that is so inspiring. Como una Latina, like we don't see that often, and I just think your episode was so inspiring, and I know the listeners are really excited to hear about your experience. So tell us and walk us through everything.
Yeah, so Shark Tank is a very long process. I think most people don't realize that, from when you apply to when you actually air can be like over a year.
Oh,
And
wow.
it's a very long process. I think I applied online. I had no connections. I literally just went to the website and applied. And then I got either like a phone call or an email saying like, we're interested to learn more about you and your brand. And then it's a very long process of vetting. So like nothing is for sure until literally you see yourself on television. Like even up until the moment that they say, "Hey, congratulations, Sandra, your episode is scheduled to air." They still have to put in a disclaimer that your episode might not air.
Wow.
Like, so it's really a lot of, it really tests your nerves because you want to be able to tell people, you want to be able to prepare, but they make it so that, it's like a very last minute thing because a lot of people film and don't air. I don't think that people realize that
Oh,
not
yeah,
everyone that goes
totally
through
agree.
that. Can you imagine going through like an 8-month process and then you go into the tank, you do the whole thing, and then you like no one ever knows.
Yeah.
So it's a very arduous process. It's very, they have to vet everything about your business. They need all of your financials, all of your, corporate documents. It's literally like talking to investors because they need to
Mhm.
protect themselves from any liability. They need to make sure that you own the formulas, that the intellectual property is yours, for example, et cetera. And at the same time, I was also fundraising. So it was doubly intense because I was preparing for Shark Tank, which was like a part time job, and then also fundraising for our first fundraise, which we closed like just a few months after the Shark Tank episode filmed.
Uh-huh.
And I went in there, with an open mind that, I didn't ask for too much. I didn't go in asking for 500,000. I asked for 300,000 for 5%. And I was willing for them to, meet me closer to my offer. And when they started with asking for 30%, I knew that there was no way we were going to see eye to eye. And
Yeah,
so it just kicked into plan B, of like, okay, well, if you want more, then I need more money.
right.
And that was kind of one of the moments, on the show that they highlighted where, Damon John is like, let me tell you how the show works, you have to
Mhm.
negotiate, and where he had like his mansplaining moment.
Yeah,
Um but I went into the tank really fully aware that not many Latinas go into the tank, that this was
yeah,
an opportunity for all of us, for our entire community. And even as nervous as I was, it wasn't about me. It wasn't even about me or just my brand. Like this was a moment for all of us, for like our entire community to really say like, here we are worth, more. And if you're not going to give it to us, like we'll go find it elsewhere. And that's exactly what happened. After I
yeah.
filmed Shark Tank, instead of $300,000 for 30%, I went on to raise 2.7 million.
Wow.
And so I think that what I really want the takeaway to be for the community is that this is like, we often make decisions out of fear, that if we don't take what's offered to us like in front of us, that there's not more on the other side, like that this is the last chance you're ever going to get, and that's just not true.
I
there's
love that.
all there's always more on the other side. And um so I hope that that was a takeaway for people, because it certainly was true for us.
Yeah, and like trust your gut, and some things are a blessing in disguise. You may not see it right now, but later you will come to realization. Well, with that, is there any other advice that you want to leave the listeners or anything that you want to tell us about Nopalera before we go?
Yeah, I mean, Nopalera is currently working on some new products, so people should definitely stay tuned.
Ooh.
And exciting new stuff. And now that we have a team, it's not just me doing everything. We're able to go out and do like in-store activation. So we're going to be visiting some cities this year, so that's really exciting. And yeah, just follow us on socials.
Awesome. Can you give us a sneak peek at what cities you might be visiting?
Yeah, so we just did an in-store activation in Long Beach in California. The next
Cool.
place we're going to be is Chicago in April, and then looking to make it over to Texas because we have a lot of customers that live in Texas. So,
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. For all the listeners out there, if you're in those cities, definitely go check them out. And thank you so much, Sandra, for being here. I'm really excited for you and your brand and what is to come. And I will have all of the socials linked on this episode. Please go and support you guys. I will talk to you guys in the next episode. Follow the podcast on all social platforms at Cuéntame con Sonia Camacho. Listen to us on Spotify, Apple Music, and YouTube. Want to be featured in a future episode? Email cuéntame.sonia@gmail.com. Thank you to our equipment sponsor, Sure.